As I said earlier, it's a great pleasure to be able to welcome and introduce Jacob Johns as our speaker this morning. One of our fundamental principles as Unitarian Universalists is that we seek to learn from a variety of teachers and a variety of faith traditions. And that also means learning from the variety of others' life experiences. Jacob grew up in Mesa, Arizona as a member of the Akimel O'odham and Hopi nations. As a youth, he experienced loss, violence, and incarceration. But unlike many who get trapped by those circumstances, Jacob has used them as an opportunity for reflection. He came to Spokane in 2010 to be near his mother, and since that time he's established himself as a very busy and prolific freelance artist. He brought some of his art for us to take a look at after the service, as well as an advocate for projects that work to heal and unify society. Last December, for example, he organized a local remembrance of the 1890 massacre at Wounded Knee, as part of which he lived for 4 days in a teepee here in our courtyard at our church, which of course is on Native American traditional land. He's been a member of our congregation since November of 2014, and this morning he'll be sharing teachings from his tribal heritage reflected through the lens of his own experience, in a talk entitled Unity Consciousness, the Evolution of Humanity. Please welcome Jacob.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody. So I want to start off today by asking you all to do a guided visualization with me. So if you can just relax yourselves for a second. So can I ask you guys to close your eyes for 30 seconds, all right? Taking a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. Imagine that the air moving in and out of your lungs has substance. Imagine that you are inhaling pure, white light. And as you breathe in that pure white light, it fills up your whole body. And as you exhale, imagine that you are blowing out smoke. That all the negative thoughts you are experiencing, all the stress in your life, and all the thoughts about them are nothing but smoke. That the visualization of white light fills up your whole being and replaces that smoke. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Now let's open up our eyes now, breathing in that light and blowing out that smoke, right? This is just a morning ritual. I'll do this in the morning until I'm nothing but full of peace, attempting to become one with that eternal light. This movement of thought was my first stepping stones down the good path. I credit this visualization to my mother, who's actually here on Mother's Day in the pulpit, or down over there, look, stand up, there's my mom. That's my mom, that's her. Yay! She doesn't want to stand up because it's Mother's Day and she can have what she wants. So my mother, she would direct us to do this visualization before we go to sleep. She would do it to prevent us from having negative bother us in the middle of the night. If we ever felt negative overcoming us or in our space, she would instruct us to do this in time of need. Years later, I unfortunately found myself in a prison cell, and in a maximum security prison for that. This space I found myself in was desperately in need of some light. In that place, surrounded by negative, I recounted upon my childhood and thought of my mother's voice whispering into my consciousness to breathe in light and to blow out smoke. In Hopi, this practice is done in the early morning. It's done as the sun rises, and you can sit, you can face the sun, and you imagine that sunshine, or tala, filling up your whole body and connecting you with that universal force. We call the act itself huta, allowing the morning sunlight to become part of your day and to become part of you and being with you throughout your actions during that day. Tawa is the Hopi name for the sun, Tawa. Some Hopis call Tawa our Father, right? Tawa gives us that light produced by the universal force, which we're all part of. But the energy that we breathe is truly one of creation. Sitting there in the early morning, locked up in a prison, not facing the sun, but facing a wall in a very tiny prison cell. listening to the words of my mom from long ago guide me to source and aligning myself with the light and not with the smoke. At 17 years old, I found my little brother hanging from a homemade noose in the closet. He was 2 years younger, and he allowed the negative to overcome him. I attempted CPR, but it wasn't enough, and dealing with the trauma and imagery from that led me to think of an escape. Some way to avoid about thinking what had happened, what was gone, and what was left. The negative, it would overtake me too. I was unable to look in the mirror because our similar appearance would allow me to only see the face of my deceased little brother, and I found that self-medication was the only way that my teenage brain could possibly cope. Eventually, that self-medication would spiral out of control, and it landed me in prison for assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon. And at age 19, I was sentenced to 8 years in prison, maximum security prison, with 2 years of parole to follow that. So, at 19, touching down at a maximum security prison, with so many years to go, it's got its opportunities and it's got its downward spirals, right? You can either crumble, you can wallow, or you can rise. So, I'm proud to say that I was able to experience every single one of these states. Okay? Rise and fall, push and pull, do nothing, rot, sink, swim. There in that place with this sway of emotions, it was so chaotic and it was just all around me. The lower frequencies of anger and hate were associated with power and safety and the primal energies that allowed you to survive in a place like that, all based on the animalistic need to dominate, to be powerful, to command. Being that young in a racially divided place, it forced you to handle situations that were very far from enlightened. These situations, they would force me into the hole often, and they earned me badges of honor, so to speak. Tattoos that would announce to the yard that I was somebody that would act without hesitancy to give myself safety. I would hit a yard then, bounce back to the hole and stay there for about 3 to 4 months. Back again, and after about 3 years, I'd gone through this routine for so long, I was seasoned enough to handle any situation that was presented itself. Just counted the months until the day became years, spend time drawing, visualizing, dreaming, and of course, meditating. When you're stuck in a tiny cell all by yourself without any form of entertainment, it forces you to be creative. No books, no TV, no radio. Working out for 2 hours a day could only do so long on the calorie intake, so, I work out so hard that I would wear myself out and I'd have to stop to catch myself. But there was nothing but silence in my own thoughts. The ever-present, you're either with us or you're against us mentality, it leads you to really look forward to the whole. The whole gave me time away. It gave me time to quiet my thoughts and to find calm in that storm. When chaos has enveloped a space, you can either sink or swim. That's not to say you can remain passive as well, especially when swimming was so very draining. So about 3 years go by, and one morning, I woke up to find that overcrowded prison system was giving me a cellmate. Right? A really tiny cell, I'm in a disciplinary unit, I'm already in the hole, but there were so many people in there that they needed to find space, so they shoved this another guy in there. So I continued my routine of meditation and exercise, and it wasn't very, very long before that new addition became loud and aggressive. Right? I woke up one morning very quickly as someone was just yelling as loud as could be right in my ear, "Watch out!" Right? To be honest, it freaked me out a little bit because I was dead asleep. I checked to see who was yelling. I looked up. I'm looking to see if this guy's in here yelling. I'm looking around. It was dead silent. I checked the cell block. The cell block was completely silent too. But I couldn't shake that yell. It was so loud and it was so in my face. So I stayed awake and I meditated for about 2 hours until it was shortly after breakfast that new guy thought it'd be a good idea to get crazy and become violent, right? It's a tiny little cell. So we fought tooth and nail for about 30 minutes until him trying his hardest to end my life, right? The guards stopped us with some pepper spray, a couple of tasers. And thankfully, after that, it was over. They moved him out. They let me stay alone in that cell for the next 4 months, which was great. So it was about 4 days later, I received a letter from my mom where she described a horrible nightmare that she had, where somebody was trying to kill me. She said the nightmare was so violent and so real that it woke her up from the dead of sleep in the middle of the night. So fully awake in the middle of the night, she sat on her bed and she prayed and she prayed and she prayed and she asked with all of her heart for me to just watch out. So this perpetual motion of things aligning in such a peculiar way that it began actually after my brother died. In those first weeks of his passing, after his passing, I should say, a dream was had where he was crying and he was holding this little black book. So I told my mom the dream and it stuck with her. And so her being raised Roman Catholic, she was at a Catholic bookstore searching for meaning. And when she was looking down, she found a little black book just like the one described in the dream. And so she picked it up and it was a Bible and it was bookmarked like how Bibles are, with a little ribbon coming through. And it was a Catholic Bible, you know. And it was just like the one my little brother Jesse was holding in the dream. And so she opened it up to Isaiah chapter 11, verse 111. And it reads, "A shoot shall sprout from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a bud shall blossom." It stands today on his gravestone. From that moment on, I saw the perpetual number sequence of 111, 1111, 111. I mean, it was just that sequence over and over and over again. I even had it tattooed on my arm. So, I mean, it was on serial numbers, it's on license plates. I stop a YouTube video, it's like 1 minute and 11 seconds. This points in a basketball game. I mean, it was everywhere. I had $111. I mean, it was crazy. It was like all the time. It made me feel like I was going psychotic. It was just too much, you know? And so, in numerology, which is a study of numbers as the figures designating the year of one's birth to determine their supposed influence on one's life, future, etc. So, noticing the sight of the repeating numbers of 111 or 1111 is a sign from your guardian angels, your spirit guides, whatever you want to call them, that you need to be conscious of your thoughts. And that the universe itself is just basically taking snapshots of your thoughts, and you are co-creating with your energy frequency to manifest things of that nature. So it's very necessary to be conscious of where your thoughts are dwelling at all times, because you're manifesting that almost at lightning fast speeds. Which made a lot of sense, because after my brother died, I was enveloped in chaos, right? And I wallowed in a cycle of pain for some time. Eventually, one early morning, while breathing in light in that prison cell, I heard somebody yelling. It was so distracting, and a thought occurred to me that, you can understand why this guy was just yelling. I mean, what are you yelling about? We're in the hole right now. Why are you screaming, you know? And so, it just occurred to me, the thought occurred to me, that being angry at anger was just insane, right? That dealing with energies that emanated from the same space that they were directed at was like a dog chasing its own tail. So, incidences would happen, and instead of just reacting with violence, I would try to understand the thought process that would lead a person to behave a particular way. I could only look inward to my own experiences and my own issues and try to draw a conclusion. In prison, people go into survival mode. Anger helps you overcome, anger helps you dominate, anger helps you deal. Being submersed in a pocket of humanity that was vibrating at a primal vibration tended to make you broadcast at that same frequency. It was insane, being angry at anger. It doesn't make anybody happy. So the concept of frequency is also another way to say world. And when you're angry, compared to when you are inspired, they are worlds apart. They are separate frequencies, different energies emanating from different frequencies of worlds, and I began to recognize when somebody was vibrating at a specific frequency, such as anger, they would interact with another person, and that person would start to vibrate at that same frequency. In traditional understanding, there are several levels of creation. That ultimately we are all just source trying to understand itself. That we incarnate into different forms of creation to understand the Creator as ourselves in an infinite loop. Along with our movement in this infinite loop, we experience 7 different levels or 7 different schools. The first level of incarnations would be substance, what it is to be a solid form, the most basic and primal of incarnations. You think of rock or mineral, primal, base. The second level we incorporate is the previous knowledge and add to it with the growth, life, and death. Think of plants in the color orange. Moving forward still, incorporating the previous level, we incorporate into the color yellow. This is where we become self-aware. Think of animals. Becoming self-aware in order to survive life and death and the giving of those energies. And so, this is where the ego comes into play. I'm here to tell you right now that we're at the end of the third world. That these outdated modes of thinking are no longer serve us as a whole. And those who hold on to the ideas of separation and those who live in a world where hurting someone doesn't hurt them will not last. Here we reside at the end of the third world, entering into the fourth, shedding our ego, and it's said that the best way to prepare for the fourth world is stop seeing yourself as separate. Start seeing yourself in the eyes that don't reside in your head. So, as a conscious effort to combat the primal energy surrounding me in prison, I made a conscious effort to think from my heart and not from my ego. To think from your heart, what a concept. It stuck with me so much. That simple phrase, I dwelled on it for months. I was just meditating on it all the time. Think from your heart, think from your heart, think from your heart. You know? What does that mean? I don't know, you know. So you think from your heart, what a concept. It struck with me so much, and I dwelt on it for so long. How can you think from your heart when everyone around you is hell-bent on ego boosting for safety and living in this constant fear-based reality? If I pinch your finger, where is that on your body? Can you wiggle your toe? Where is that on your body? So if I asked you to pinch your thoughts, where's those? Where does that lie? I don't know. It could be anywhere. Since I knew I didn't want to be vibrating at an illogical, primal level, I made a conscious effort to direct my thoughts from my heart. So as a conscious effort to think from my heart, I would visualize my thoughts. If you were to pinch them, you would be pinching my heart. Some people can see orange, and I wanted people to see green when they saw me. My thoughts had to emanate from that proper place, and my actions could not conflict with that frequency. And it made me so very empathetic that I could feel everyone else's emotions because I understood them as my own. Opening up my heart led me towards understanding that the same energy beating my heart was beating every single one else's. I knew someone was angry because I could feel it. I could feel it like it was my own anger, and that face that they were making, I could make that face. How could I hurt myself? How could I be angry at myself? I am you and you are me. For the first time in my life, I had clarity. There, deep down in that small, dirty cell I was locked in, there was light. I began to write with that clarity material that condensed these epiphanies into simplistic nature-based concepts that were universal to the human race. I'm a leaf, you are a leaf, and we are a tree. This led me to Eastern philosophy, where the correlations between Native American culture and Eastern spirituality, they talk of 7 different worlds as well, except they call them chakras. These different worlds reside in our physical bodies. And if we think from our hearts, which is the 4th chakra point, then we emanate green. The traditional teaching is that the guiding force in the 4th level of consciousness is love in all forms. Love is the ultimate truth. Love is light. For all things stem from the divine glow, which we are all a part of. I am a leaf, and you are a leaf, and we are a tree. A unified consciousness where there really is no separation. There's no separation. We're all source and can find comfort and reside in that truth, that you are never alone, that this allowed me to break free from fear and try to actively change the world, always drawing from universal light to replace my fears and fill my heart. So this is all fine and dandy, right? Oh, sounds good. It sounds really good, right? But esoteric knowledge without scientific proof is just that. So I began to study not only spiritual teachings, but also scientific thought, as the study of quantum mechanics piqued my interest. How could you prove unified consciousness, right? Unity consciousness. I can go around talking about it all day, but where's the proof, right? So I started to teach, as the study of quantum mechanics piqued my interest, I started to read more and more about it. The books were starting to overlap. They were becoming, the spiritual book would talk about quantum physics, and then this other one, they were just like, it was a weird synchronicity that continued to take place. And so as the study of quantum mechanics piqued my interest, how could you prove it? It turns out that the workings of the universe on a quantum level defied what we know about the universe right now. Everything seemed to be moved by some sort of unseen force, guiding along particles orbiting an atom without causing nuclear destruction, as everything being made up of the atoms just blew my mind, right? Crazy. What harmony, though, right? What absolute perfect vibration. In the field of quantum mechanics, it was discovered that tiny nanoparticles behaved in a way previously unknown. They would shift from solid particles to light particles. And the only thing that correlated the fluctuation was when the particle was being observed by someone. Your consciousness was making a light particle shift to a solid state just by observing it in reality. And my mind was just, what? You know. So everything just being solid because we observe it, right? The spiritual teachers of the world, from medicine men to yogis, from Jesus to Moses, all bent and shaped our reality, all credited the divine universal force. So, as we all sit here together, I would like to ask you all to change the world, right? So let's take our hands, if we can do this. Everybody take your hands. And I would like to take your hands and rub them together. Right, we're going to rub them together. All right? You rub them together until you feel a slight warming sensation. And it's by your thoughts guiding your body to make this motion, your consciousness is choosing to do so. And with that warmth, you have effectively changed the world. If all the particles orbiting the atoms in the entire universe do a harmonious dance, polite enough to not bump into each other, and rubbing your hands together ever so slightly shifted the hydrogen bonds, and in doing so, the rest of the universe had to shift as well. Such a slight movement, and we changed the world. You are that powerful. You have the ability to do as you please. Here we have free will giving us the breath of life, but what will you do with it? How are you going to change the world? Will you fall? Will you wallow? Or will you rise? Because I am a leaf, and you are a leaf, and we are a tree. There is no separation. You are light. And I encourage you to look for the synchronistic events that are ever present, signs the universe provides to lead you down the good path, always with us, always guiding, encouragement, and upliftment for all. Focus your thoughts and draw from your heart center. And move with confidence as the whole entire fathomable universe is with you. Ani Ni Hajan. Thank you.